Welcome back to Lost Legacies. I'm Matt.
And I'm Sam.
And we're here. The season 1 finale. Episodes 24 and I guess 25. Exodus parts 1 and I guess parts 2.
It's been a long road.
Actually, I lied because technically the last one was part 1. So this is part 2 and 3.
If you want to get technical, this is technically Exodus part 1 and 2 because that's the name of the episode.
No. You see, last week's was part 1.
Yeah, but last week's was an Exodus.
Yes, it was.
Oh.
See, that's the whole thing. It was always it was a two-part finale, but part 2 was 2 hours. Which, let's just get into it real quick because it pissed me off so much when part 2 ended. They're just walking through the forest. They hear a bird. Hurley says something, and it says to be continued.
Yeah, I did not like that.
That is such bullshit. And again, the only reason this gets under my skin is because that was like, I don't know if it was the studio or what. That's not how they filmed it. This was one long episode. It wasn't 2 separate episodes. That was only for streaming. And that's why also the numerical order of the episodes gets thrown off after this. And this I believe this happens for several season finales. The part 2 is 2 hours, but they split it into
2 episodes.
2 episodes, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I don't like that. I think that's BS.
Mm-hmm.
ABC, you are ruining the integrity of authorial intent. You're ruining the director's vision. Release the Damon Lindelof / Carlton Cuse cut, okay?
It's an act of vandalism, ABC.
It is.
Oh,
how
my God.
dare you? You should be ashamed of yourselves.
Restore the Abrams verse.
Oh no.
So because we've been talking about this all season, here and there, about the mess or the screw ups with the numerical order of episodes,
right?
And the way things are weird with season finales. And I just thought maybe we're just whining, maybe we're just bitching, maybe we should just shut up and stop talking about it. And then we get to this episode, and they give us that dumbass to be continued. I was like, what? No, I'm completely validated by this watch. I was like, it doesn't make any sense. And I could see how people binging this, watching it for the first time, they're just kind of like, okay, here we go, season finale to be continued. What? Like what? In a season finale, you don't want, even if it's like the first half or the middle half or whatever, you don't want to have a moment that pisses your audience off like that. That was it? What?
Yeah.
And I think even the structure of this episode, it's obvious this was just one long episode. Because if you split it in half, there's no overarching arc. There's no beginning, middle, or end. It just stops.
Yeah.
And again, this is all post, the TV run. It's just, it sucks for people who didn't watch it originally on television as it aired, because it butchers this one cool, even if it's just this one episode, they butchered this tight story into 2 separate parts that don't really work.
Yeah.
So, and we'll talk more about this too, about the series finale, because that was another big issue. For several years, the series finale you watched while streaming was not the series finale we got on television.
Oh.
So prep yourself for that, because we're 4 seasons away from that, Sam.
Oh, geez.
Or 5.
Okay.
I don't know. So
weren't they
6 seasons. So,
6 seasons. Okay.
Yeah, so we're 5 seasons away from that episode.
Okay.
We're going to bitch about that. Get ready, listeners.
Get ready,
it's
listeners. Coming. There's going to be a lot of bitching from Matt and I the next couple of years.
But other than that, that was really my only complaint about this whole finale, which is episodes 24, 25, Exodus parts 2 and 3. The Black Rock has been found. Now the survivors must find a way to transport the dynamite across the island before the others arrive. Meanwhile, the open sea presents new challenges for the survivors on the raft.
So I have to say, because I was shocked by this. and I think you might be shocked by this as well.
Mhm.
I thought the episode before was a much stronger episode. I thought it was a much better episode. I almost a part of me wishes. I know I said this last time, but part of me wishes that they just ended the show there. Like, that's it. Like, you're canceled. You're not even going to get your last episode. Like, no, like, this is it. Because, I mean, one, it ends on such a high note. You know, you're like, wow, like, there's a mysterious island, you know, and there's some glimmer of hope. And you're like, yeah, this is great. Just wonderful, sweeping, you know, soaring music. And you're like, yeah, this is great. And maybe it's because it was split on streaming. This episode is split into two. Maybe that has an effect. But I did sort of feel like I don't even want to talk about them as two parts. It's one part. It's just one long episode. I did sort of feel I wasn't let down, but I just felt like, wow, there's kind of a lot that we're doing here. And I don't know if I understood all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's coming back to the flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
In this episode, I feel like the flashbacks that were being used were sort of just to tell, okay, again, it's sort of like, okay, this is where you started, like right before you got onto the plane. And now here you are. And I guess from a storytelling perspective, just watching it, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like thematically, I can see like, okay, Charlie, this memory is about Charlie, you know, like having his addiction, you know, doing all this stuff. And then we cut back. Oh, okay. Charlie, you know, Charlie's clean, you know, he's trying to help people, you know, he's not thinking about himself or endangering somebody else. He's thinking about other people. And it's like, okay, all right. You know, even like the Jin flashback where he's confronted by some like spy from his boss, you know, in the bathroom at the airport, who tells him that he's never going to be free. And then it cuts and there's Jin on the raft, you know, and he's like, he has this look of peace, you know, on him. I'm like, okay, it's interesting juxtapositions. It's an interesting, like, this is where you were. Look how far you've come to this moment. I'm like, okay, I get it. Maybe I'm just not a fan of that.
You just brought up a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm trying to figure out how I can address it all without going through it like bullet points. I do agree part one works much, much better. And I was just thinking about this yesterday before I even watched the finale. It's the whole Avengers thing. You know, think Infinity War is better than Endgame. Me personally, I don't know. I don't know if that's my feelings, but that's what a lot of people feel like. Same reason why Empire Strikes Back is better than Return of Jedi. Well, there's more reasons why people don't like Return of Jedi. But
the Ewoks are great, and I will not stand for the slander.
Yes. So I think the thinking is that it's like it's the setup. You know, Empire Strikes Back took them to that dark place.
Right.
This part one, it didn't take them to the dark place, but mechanically speaking, the story did. It was a cliffhanger. I mean, they're all lost as a cliffhanger, but it felt like part one felt like the tying up of all the storylines and the culmination of the first season. And this is where I'm going to eat my words, because last week I said, oh, this is so much better than Game of Thrones because of the penultimate episode. Lost saves it for the end. Game of Thrones always had it episode 9, and then episode 10 was the aftermath. And I'm watching this series finale. I'm like, ooh, I got that totally wrong. Because although it is a 2-part season finale, part 1 was the penultimate episode. Yeah. That's where everything went down. Part 2, the actual finale, is the aftermath. Because that's the whole thing with the raft. It's a new story. Charlie, so going back to Charlie, when I saw his flashback in this one, I wrote down another unnecessary flashback for Charlie. We get nothing new. But then towards the end of the episode, where he finds the heroine, I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. I see why they did that. It's kind of like a reminder. So it's not just like, hey, look how far you've come. It's like, it's really setting up. It's more for the audience's sake.
Okay.
You know, hey,
Yeah.
hey, don't forget. And that's where I was feeling like, okay, they can't do it Game of Thrones style because this came first, but it's that same story. Charlie's his chapter's done by last episode. Then the finale is where chapter 2 begins. He finds the heroine, and we don't know what he's going to do until his very last shot of the season, where, you know, he's with Claire and they're being a little family with baby Erin. She finally named the baby. Which we'll talk about them a lot later. But the last shot, we see that he has the Virgin Mary statue in his bag. So his chapter 2 has already begun. And so with that in mind, I start thinking a lot about this show. At least this episode was exactly that, the opposite of what I was saying last week. A lot of these characters, they're already starting their second chapter. You have like the Dynamite crew. They're kind of the only ones still stuck in chapter 1 because they're trying to get into the hatch. You know, that's the culmination of the whole island story so far. But the raft, Charlie, I don't know. We'll see what other characters going forward, like who's kind of, I guess you could say Sun as well, because like everything with Jin, that completed. They split up. They're separated now, and they're in love again. So that story's over. So what's Sun gonna do now? And then Jin's story's just thrown with the raft crew, you know?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you know, I can, when you put it like that, yeah, I guess it does sort of, it isn't so much of a, hey, look how far you've come, specifically for the people who get, you know, their little, not like an ending, but who get to have moments where stuff in those flashbacks comes back. Because even the scene with Jin about the watch, that part, I guess, ends where Michael hands Jin the watch. It's like, oh, hey, this is yours. And Jin looks at it, and then after, because they've been bonding over Jin learning English, he hands Michael the watch back, and he says, you.
Right.
He gives him the watch. So it's like, okay, so this is, because we already know where Jin was coming from before he got on the plane. You know, he was going to leave, like deliver the watch, and then he and Sun are leaving. They're leaving that life behind. They're escaping her father. And then so this sort of puts a capper on that, where it's like, even though Jin was threatened, he was, well, okay, even though Jin was threatened, this is like the ending of that entire story, where it's like, okay, the watch doesn't matter anymore.
Right. Yeah, I was very on the fence about that, because I really enjoyed that flashback last episode with him and Sun, even with the shitty couple who later die, at least according to our canon.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But then they kind of played it again from Jin's perspective. And then again, though, it's like there was nothing new. Same thing with Charlie. There was nothing new. But then later it comes around. And see, but in Jin's flashback, they never bring the watch out.
No, they never do.
So,
they're just talking about it.
So it's really interesting. So after that one, you know, the guy who says you'll never be free, Jin's on a raft heading back to shore. And I'm like, he got his freedom, you know? Like, so it was really weird. I feel like the flashbacks were handled better, or at least the scenario, the way the episode structure is, they just worked better in part 1.
Right.
And part 2. And of course, it is supposed to be one big story, this season finale, parts 1, 2, 3, whatever. So it makes sense that, like, okay, Jin kind of gets his resolution further along than the others. But I think most of it, looking at it, part 1 is the ending to that first chapter in the story. Parts 2 and 3 are really setting up for season 2. And I think there's a big obvious things looking into it going forward. I think obviously everything that happens with the raft crew, which you didn't think they were going to come back. You thought that was it for the season.
Yeah.
And we got some really cool stuff. We got some nice character moments for everyone. But
Mhm.
honestly, a lot of it felt like filler.
Mm.
So I know we keep talking about the, how many parts it is and all this stuff. Technically, right now, time wise, it's 3 episodes.
Yeah.
I feel like they could have done it in 2. There's, or maybe 2, but the second one was a little longer. I don't know. Um,
I think you would have had to have streamlined one of the stories and maybe even cut one of the
Yeah.
things that happened.
well, originally ABC they wanted the very last episode, this one part 2, they wanted it to be 60 minutes.
Okay.
But Lindelof and Hughes came back and made a 90-minute episode. So that's why it's
Mm.
doubled. And I don't know, because I feel like, okay, on the raft, when the rudder breaks off and Sawyer has to go get it. Cool, it was a great scene. You see everyone working together, and it kind of sets up that Michael sees he has a gun. But none of that really pays off in this episode.
Yeah.
So, and spoiler alert for the episode you should have watched, this episode ends with the raft blowing up.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was the point of that? I don't know. It just felt like kind of filler to get them to the end. Their story doesn't change if we see that rudder fall off or not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And a
Yeah.
lot of stuff happened. This is all in their first day leaving the island, and shit goes south fast.
I know. This is insane to me.
Yeah. So it's kind of things like that. And then the whole Russo storyline, she comes back. The whole thing of the others coming in the black smoke that they really brilliantly set up last episode, it all turns out, oh, it's just Russo. She was setting it up. None of it was real. She stole little baby Aaron to make a trade with the others for her daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And none of it was real.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, shit. Okay. I mean, that's a weight off, our shoulders because the others aren't coming. But it just felt like a lot of that Charlie and Sayid trekking through the jungle trying to find her, everyone moving to the caves. Now, in hindsight, just kind of seems like, well, shit. A lot of these episodes were setting that up, and then there was no payoff for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we take the time to again show, oh, Russo's great with traps. She set a trap quickly, and I don't know, Charlie gets to have a cool head wound, and Sayid gets to fix it in a cool way. But
it was all
again,
cool stuff.
Yeah,
Charlie had cool character moments, but yeah, again, none of this is really driving the plot forward.
Exactly.
In the end, it kind of ties up nicely for this is all this these 3 episodes were all character driven. We just didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
It's playing out like action adventure, things are happening, and it really turns out no, not really. So it was very weird. It left a very weird feeling, and I know we're both kind of sounding down on this, but it was a solid episode.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's the thing. I wanted to get it out there that there was something that made the last episode just kind of pitch perfect. And so when this one by the end of it, I'm like, yeah, that was damn good television. But yeah, just as the whole, I'm like, no, the stronger one is the one before
part 1. Yeah.
Part 1. Exactly. But let's bring up some positives. My boy Arnst.
Oh man, hats off. I mean, did you not see that coming?
I mean, I totally. Again, I love I love the moment where he's talking to Hurley and Hurley's just like, huh? Oh, I'm sorry. Am I boring you? Am I not interesting enough for you? Uh-huh. And he goes up and he's like, there are 40 other survivors on from that plane. All right. You guys aren't the only one that has anything. It reminded me of the episode. Again, we're throwing it back to Community. It reminded me of the Community episode where Shirley's having her baby in class.
Oh yeah.
And it cuts to a couple of people in the back of the class and they're like, man, remember when they went on that trip for like a whole week? Like, yeah, that was really nice. And then it just cuts away. Yeah, like that just, and I think that's, again, that's just another thing that I really wish, in hindsight, I wish Lost had taken into consideration. Like, I want to know about all these other people, even Sawyer, when he's reading everybody's letters on the
Yeah.
raft, even he starts mentioning people as like, oh yeah, I didn't know, she missed her husband and kids so much because she's off sleeping with Steve every night. And Walt is the one who has to be like, Steve's dead. That's Scott. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And like in those moments, I'm kind of like, yeah, like all like screw the other survivors. Like we're only focused on, our, grade A quality hot people,
Yeah. And I love when Arns
we've been
brings that up.
following.
He's like, I'm a high school teacher. I know how these cliques work. He's like, even the gym teachers, you think they would let me sit with them at lunch? No.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so like credit where credit's due, because that guy has only been in like 3 episodes.
Yeah. But we're going to remember him.
Yeah, we're going to remember him. We might only remember him because he blows up.
Yeah.
But also I liked seeing him. I liked there being another character that just popped in and popped out, who I won't say he has more staying power than someone like Rose, but even in this whole 3-hour season finale, we couldn't bring Rose back for like a moment,
Right.
we couldn't have her like show up at some point, like, no, but we're gonna give it to Arnst because he blows up, trying to help everybody.
I mean, they're going into the jungle to get dynamite. There's going to be an explosion, and then you have this one guest star show up. And you're like,
it's Chekhov's dynamite, Chekhov's exploding guest star.
Yeah. It's like I don't know if this guy's coming back.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but like it does, but it works wonders because like you kind of know, like, okay, yeah, like this is dangerous. The things that we're doing are very dangerous.
Yeah.
But then you have that guy who's like, oh yeah, he's a science teacher. He knows what he's doing. He's giving us the lecture, even though he's being, kind of, a dick about it. Like, no, like he's just trying to impress the gravity of the situation. And then he blows up.
Yeah.
And so from right then, I'm like, oh, that just sets the tone for the rest of the episode. Like,
now here's my thing.
Dangerous.
Why did he grab that piece of dynamite? It looked horrible. There was stuff oozing out of it.
Yeah. I know.
It is choices. Yeah. But yeah, everything going forward from that point on with the dynamite, really, the stakes were high because you knew what could happen. And then I love that scene where Jack and Locke are pulling it out very carefully.
Oh my god. Yeah. And Locke does the thing, the operation thing. Like, zzz. You like to play games, John? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Oh,
like,
God. Oh, okay. So let's talk about them because like they are very much this there's a lot of Jack and Locke going back and forth in this episode. Just the way they approach situations, they deal with everything. They're attacked by some kind of smoke monster.
Yep.
We get to see some kind of smoke monster that sounds like a machine. And it's pulling Locke down into the hole. And he tells Jackie, like, let me go. I'll be okay. And no, they throw dynamite down there and blow it up. And if you notice, that dynamite fell far.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, it did.
So Jack and Locke has this huge conversation in very dramatic, dark lighting. And I like it because they're talking, and then the longer it goes, like they start whispering because they don't want anyone else to hear. But they're talking about that, and Jack thinks this guy's just crazy, and Locke's bringing up like, look where we are. We didn't survive by accident, and the ones who did had very superficial injuries, and all this. And he's just bringing up a lot of good points. He's like, where we're at, Jack. It's like nobody wants to admit it, but we know something's different about this island. It's destiny, Jack. I don't believe in destiny. You do.
You just don't know it yet.
You just don't know it yet.
It's one of my favorite. That's one of my favorite like trope writing lines.
Oh, I know.
It's like, oh yeah, you're already dead. You just don't know it yet.
Did you see the new Rick and Morty trailer?
No, I haven't.
The family's walking through this forest, and Rick's like, "It's too quiet." And Summer's like, "You only said it once." Yeah, you're supposed to say it's quiet. It's too quiet. Why would I say it twice? We know it's too quiet.
Yeah, that's how I feel about those things too.
I love it. But yeah, so there's this Locke and Jack are starting to butt heads, and Locke tells him, "You're a man of science, Jack." And Jack says, "Well, what does that mean to you?" He says, "I'm a man of faith." And I think that's a huge setup of what's to come. And I think that's a huge just indicator of what kind of show this is. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't want to bring this up, but a couple episodes ago when Boone died, just now, years later, they asked Carlton Cuse, about that episode. And he says, "Why'd you kill off Boone?" He said, essentially, they knew someone had to die, and they needed something big enough to pit Jack against Locke. It's not so much pitting them together, but it's what they stand for. Mm-hmm. And that's what they bring up in this episode. The whole reason they wanted to pit Jack against Locke is because they want that philosophical clash. That's what Lost is. Mm-hmm. A man of science versus a man of faith. Mm-hmm. And what Jack asked Locke, "Well, what about Boone?" He says, "Boone was a sacrifice that the island demanded." What? We already knew that. We were talking about that. We kind of figured it out. Just the way like Locke kind of reacted to everything. But it's so easy to fall on Locke's side, but at the same time, it's like, dude, this is pretty crazy, man. Mm-hmm. In real life, I probably would be on Jack's side.
Yeah, yeah. I was just about to point that out because, we obviously we have the benefit of being, just the audience. We are omniscient, so we see everything that's happened. We see where everybody's coming from. We see their pain in their past, and we see how they're overcoming it, or they're currently working through it in the present. So yeah, when we see Boone dying, and then we also get little baby Aaron being born in the same episode, we're just like, oh man, it's that duality. It's only death pays for life. It's the Game of Thrones thing. But that's because we're reading it as, as an audience. If somebody told me that in real life, in a situation like that, where people were dying, where we were stranded, where there was no hope of rescue, and somebody told me that one of these other people had to die because this place demanded it, yeah, no, I'd kick my boot right in their throat and be like, "Nope, you fanatical son of a bitch. Mm-hmm. That's not how this works. Mm-hmm. This isn't how anything is supposed to work." Yeah, I would 100% be on Jack's side of that, because there has to come a point where with both within the realms of science and both within the realms of faith, there has to be a point where you are concerned about the people. You are concerned about the whole. And that's where Jack is leaning to more right now. He doesn't give a shit about Locke's spiritual journey, this quest that he's going on, but he recognizes that it's dangerous. Mm-hmm. Regardless of whether or not Jack believes it, he just knows that it's going to make Locke a dangerous person because he believes in it so much he's willing to let other people die for it. Mm-hmm. And that's the whole riddle of the hatch. It's like, why do we need this open? Locke needs it open because he needs to know about the island. Jack needs the hatch open because he needs to save the people that are on the island. Mm-hmm. And that's where you get good old Hurley coming in being like, no, this is just a bad idea all around. Mm-hmm. Let's take a brief minute and talk about my boy Hugo, because I loved Hugo's flashbacks. I know we talked a lot about the flashbacks being like, they don't make sense. I don't care about them. Like, you know what? I don't care that Hurley's flashback is technically reiterating all the things that we already knew and then ending on a very, very hilarious, ironic note of like, this is your lucky day. You're making this flight.
It's interesting though that you bring that up though, because that's not what we've seen in the past. Hurley is very lucky. So the fact that he was having this very bad day, I probably didn't realize it in the first watch, but now years later, I'm like, oh, this is really interesting.
Like, yeah. Well, because the reason why I say it's reiterating is because like, even though he's been lucky enough to like win the lottery, get a bunch of money, you know, like all these other things, there's still so much bad luck that's been following him. You know, his uncle dies or his grandfather dies. You know, his mom, you know, breaks her ankle and he gets arrested. Like,
yes, but and we talked about this a lot in his episode. He always comes out on top, and all the bad luck is around him. It's never to him.
Okay,
that's also why he goes on his like little suicide mission because he knows he's going to be fine.
Yeah,
which was kind of weird. This episode because he was really nervous about the dynamite. I'm like, I thought he would be cool with it, but I was glad the way they bring everything back because that was something we never saw that in his character until his flashback episode, and then we didn't really see anything since until this one where he's talking to Kate about bad luck always happening to people around him. And is following him and all that stuff. Like, I'm really glad they brought that back because they hadn't mentioned it since. He's always been like the comedic character. So it's really cool that they brought that back. And then with his whole, he probably had the best flashback because one, it was so fun. And the music really reminded me of What About Bob?
Yeah.
And it was long too. His probably had to be the longest flashback.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, the whole thing is like he had such bad luck. He wasn't supposed to get on this plane, but then he did. And it's like, it's your lucky day.
And like, that was something that I was gonna say was that like it's kind of a cruel joke that, you know, because Hurley in his mind, like he has to get out of Australia. He has to go. He's got to go back. His mom's birthday is the next day. Like he needs to leave. And all of the bad luck that's happening to him and just like compounded onto him now is making him miss all of that. So it's almost like, you know, read the tea leaves. You're not supposed to leave today.
Yeah.
You know, like this isn't what you're supposed to do. But because who we know Hurley is determined. He's not going to let this thing stop him. That was true in both his flashback in that episode and in his story that episode. He's freaking trekking it, man. You know, like he's just going off. It's like, I'm good. Nothing's going to hurt me. Like I need to find the crazy lady. So we already know that about Hurley is that like, it doesn't like he is determined to do something. He's going to do it. And so that's the whole thing about his flashback is that like he's determined to get on the plane. He needs to get on the plane despite all the bad things that are happening. It's his strength of character that is making him get on the flight.
Right.
And so it's like, cool. Today's your lucky day. You're getting on the flight. And he's like, yes, thank you. He hugs the stewardess and like goes in. And then it's like, you know what? It was, I think it was the numbers trying to save him. It was the numbers trying to prevent him from getting on the flight. I mean, like that's how I interpret it. And it's like, because also it's like, well, I mean, if everybody's supposed to be on the island, Hurley was going to get on the island no matter what.
Right.
You know,
that's really interesting. So yeah, the thing is like, see, we don't really know how it works. The island, I mean, the numbers bring bad luck to everyone around him and it always works out for his favor. So working out for his favor this time meant he wasn't supposed to get on that plane. So he's still like, he overcame the odds. And we've talked about it a lot. His backstory and Claire's backstory are really the only ones are uniquely tied to the island.
Mm-hmm.
And Claire, we get a little flashback for her, not really. She's in the montage. But with her episode, it kind of sets up the idea that she was meant to end up on this island. She was
Mhm.
meant to have her baby on this island. And now Hurley's, we're kind of left with the impression he wasn't supposed to end up on this island.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Again, it's the numbers. Maybe they were trying to prevent him from getting to the island
Mm-hmm.
for a good reason, for a bad reason. We don't know because we really don't know what the numbers are for.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, man. It was crazy. It was cool. I loved it. It was a nice bit of fun to what could have been a dark episode, you know, or at least very heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So, but let me see. Let me give a shout out to the set design because the Black Rock set was awesome.
Awesome.
That was cool, man. Like that's all I got to say. It turns out it's a slaver ship. It was an old slaver ship, and it looked like it on screen, man. Like that was a cool looking place.
My hope is that, you know, we just decide to move into the Black Rock. You know,
Right? Yeah.
It's like, okay, you know what? We're gonna take the dynamite out first, though, because that
Yeah.
can come bite us in the butt. You know, we're gonna grab it, we're gonna chuck it into the ocean, and then it's gonna blow up.
I would love to live there, except it's in the middle of the dark territory.
True, this is very true, but also I feel like, well, one, we don't have to worry about hurricanes. It's in a place called the Dark Territory, and I don't know about you, but if I'm gonna live somewhere where I know nobody's gonna like venture and try and mess with me and get with me, it's gonna be in a place called the Dark Territory.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that dude's crazy. He lives in the Dark Territory. He lives at the Black Rock in the Dark Territory. Be like, hell yeah, you're not getting me.
Let's see. There's just so much. Like we're not going to be able to talk about all of it, of course, but
Yeah,
I love how the raft crew, the rafties, they get to see the island from further distance and they see how massive it is. And it's like, okay, that kind of puts into perspective of why no one's really exploring too far. Because it's like all cliffs, at least the side they were on.
It's
just like no beach.
Yeah, there's like a thin sliver of beach, and you're like, well, that makes sense.
It looked like Jurassic Park.
It's huge. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I guess they all filmed in Hawaii, so I guess technically it is Jurassic Park.
Did Jurassic Park film in Hawaii?
I'm pretty sure.
Huh.
Did it?
I don't know.
Where was Jurassic Park filmed? Yes, it is Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
It was a 4,000 acre ranch.
I can see that. Man, how cool is that? You know, just to have somebody's like, hey, we really like your ranch. Can we make our movie here? I don't know. What kind of movie is it? Is it going to be one of those weird movies? Like, it's actually a movie about dinosaurs.
Do it.
Do they eat people? Yeah. I'm in. Whatever you want. Can I have a cameo? Can I get eaten by a dinosaur? That's my only stipulation. Let me get eaten by a dinosaur.
I love Sawyer and Michael bonding over Bob Marley. I like that Sawyer of all people is singing Redemption song.
Yeah.
I don't know, it kind of gives some kind of hope to him, but mentally he's not really in the headspace, so I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just something nice.
Yeah. Let's just talk about what's at the heart of the episode. Stealing children.
Yeah, man.
That's that's been on my mind because I'm like, you know what? Yeah, freaking like the others tried to take Claire's baby, or they tried to take Claire while she's pregnant, you know. So I'm like, obviously, like it's all got to do, you know, with this.
Which let's pause because before we go into that, Claire remembers she was fighting Russo, and Russo has the scars on her arm.
Well, that's what I was gonna get into. Because I said the others. There's this whole because it's like that, like that's like the biggest twist of the episode.
I thought we were talking about Walt, but okay, we're talking about Claire and Russo.
I said children is plural, Matthew, and that's why we're talking about this, because that's been the whole thing with the Black Smoke, is that like, oh, like they're coming, they're gonna come for you, you know, all this stuff. and obviously Claire is worried because they've already tried to get her before. They had her before. And so she's like, I can't let them take my baby, do all this stuff. This is why it's the biggest freaking twist asterisk in the episode when it's not actually the others, it's Rousseau. And she takes the baby, and we're like, what the hell? Go on a little adventure, do all that stuff. And you're like, oh, and then you find out like, oh, she was behind the black smoke. It was never the others. She wanted to give it to them. Like, what the hell? Like, this is crazy. So it sort of eliminated the others as a threat, at least like for this moment for me.
Right.
Which is why the ending to the Rafties was so
it came out of nowhere, right? You're like,
came out of like, I knew something bad was gonna happen. Like, this can't end on a good note, obviously.
Yeah.
But I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
Let me just say, 4 people on like a little rinky-dink boat drifting out at sea come up to me. I'm gonna be weary as hell.
Yeah.
I know these are like the first different faces we've seen in like a month, but I'm also gonna be weary as hell. If I were Sawyer, I would have like gone underneath the boat with my gun and just been hiding out. And then as soon as they said, we're gonna have to take your boy, but like, nope, shoot from the water, dude. You never suspect it. But yeah, they overpower. They have guns.
Yeah.
They pulled out 2 of them and shot Sawyer.
Yep.
Instantly down in the water. Jin went to go save him. And then that just left Michael all by himself to just handle these other guys. And they take Walt. And, Walt's so freaking useless because he just like gets captured. And he's like, Dad, please save me. I'm like, damn it, Walt. Bite one of these dudes. Like, what the hell, man? Like, you don't want to leave. So just like use your psychic mental powers and like push the boat towards.
Moral of the story. That's why they should have kept Vincent.
I know. You should have kept Vincent. Dogs, man's best friend. They will protect their owners. Yeah, they will protect their friends. So yeah, dude, it's crazy. I'm like, well, I didn't see that coming. Like they were after a child. They've got a child. I just didn't expect it to be Walt.
Yeah. So with the Russo thing, we don't really get that resolution. She gives the baby back and she's all crying and stuff. And we don't really just now there's more questions. What does she have to do with this? Why was she fighting Claire? Don't get any resolution to that. So we'll see. What happened? Because Ethan had her. So how does Russo enter the picture?
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, you're exactly right. It was the ultimate red herring.
It technically is because it's like, oh, like we think that Russo is either like with the others or, like she said, she was going to trade.
Yeah.
So we just assume that like whatever it is, it's going to revolve around Claire's baby. It's going to revolve around Aaron. And then it turns out it had nothing to do with that. It was just Rousseau the whole time.
Yeah. So we're like, oh, okay, I guess, just like you said, others aren't a problem until they are.
Yeah,
that was great. That was a great scene. That was a great way to end that storyline for the season.
R.I.P. the raft, because
man, that was such a cool raft.
That's a nice looking raft. I was hoping we were at least going to get one more episode on the raft, but oh well.
Yeah. And then we go back to the end, which has Hurley discovering the numbers on the hatch.
Mm-hmm.
He freaks out. I don't know. It just left us so cliffhanger. Like, what does that mean? We knew the numbers on the hatch. Hurley didn't.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? And then Locke, of course, hell no. He lights the fuse. Thing blows up. My note was, I mean, come on. Who didn't see that ending coming? Did you see that ending coming? Because watching it for the first time, I knew. I'm like, we're not going to get to see what's in the hatch. It's going to end like right before we do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, that's one of the things that I've known.
Like the last shot. Like
I knew the last shot of season 1 was I didn't remember who. I assumed it was Locke. I didn't know who else. But yeah, the last shot I knew was Locke and somebody else looking down into the hatch. The camera pulls back, and that's it. And I'm like, yeah, obviously they're not gonna like tell us exactly what's in it because they want you to come back for season 2.
Yeah. It's like, damn it. I was screaming the first time I saw it on TV. Like, no.
Hindsight being what it is, like, I really do wish I had seen this, like, as it was airing.
Yeah.
Because, I think that's like, again, and we keep
2005. How old were you in 2005?
I don't know. How old were you in 2005?
I was 18.
Okay. I was almost 4 and a half years younger than that.
So you're like 13, 14.
13, 14, yeah. I'm going to say 13 because, again, my birthday is like at the end of the year.
So how would your life be different if you had watched Lost as it aired?
I think I would be better prepared for disappointment. I'd have a better handle on that. No, I'm just kidding. I honestly don't know. It's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I didn't watch The Princess Bride or Labyrinth until I was an adult. I love the hell out of those movies now, but I feel like as a kid, I would have been primed to really just like fall in love. Like, I feel like if we had watched The Princess Bride growing up, that would have been on rotation with like Young Frankenstein and Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, like that, just like the comedy movies that we watched with mom and dad. I feel like that would have been among them, And who knows? Maybe, like we might have gone into D&D earlier,
that's why I've been thinking, like, I really wish I had gotten into it at a younger age, because that would have been, well, I mean, it depends when we got into it. But I really think it would have influenced my style of storytelling, especially because the whole reason I got into D&D in the first place was because I liked the way you tell stories. I like a lot of chaotic randomness, but there's also like mechanics and balance to it for the most part.
Yeah.
There's all these things that really suit my style of storytelling that I really like. Hey, you could do this while playing a game. I love it. So if I had that when I was first like learning to write and tell these stories, who knows, or how that would have changed.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think looking back, I was always very sci-fi kid. So it would have been interesting to see what a more fantasy based Matt would have looked like.
Because even like I think you and I share that, and that as much as we love fantasy and fantasy stories, like our inclination is to always go sci-fi.
Dude, it's always sci-fi. We talk about mythology. I'm always like, what does this look like in space?
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to, when I was in high school, I wanted to take, instead of, like the hot thing to do, right after, Baz Luhrmann's Romeo plus Juliet, was to set every Shakespeare story in like a modern day gangland, whatever. And you're like, yeah okay, fine. Hamlet's doing his soliloquy in a fucking blockbuster.
Oh,
okay.
Dude, I'm with you on that.
And I'm just like, you know what? No, you know what I'm going to do? I started writing and creating like concept art to do Julius Caesar, but in space.
Nice.
And now that I think about it, it was a little bit more like Warhammer, because I wanted everybody to be in the armor. They're gonna have like laser blades. I didn't call them lightsabers because
blades.
They're laser blades, so they stab Caesar with laser blades, and I'm like, piercing the armor and shit.
This is laser. Oh no, it's like this is blade.
Blade.
This is laser.
Laser.
This is
laser.
Dude, I totally get that, dude, because like I did that with all of Shakespeare. Like, well, I'm
still kicking around a Tempest set in space, like retelling. It's gonna happen.
I just love playing with that as we all know, we won't mention it because it's still a work in progress. But I don't have a modern day Romeo and Juliet, but like the themes that are used in it, I'm using in a modern story.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm like taking those themes to the max. Like there's no
to the max,
dude. Romeo and Juliet to the max. That's what I'll call it. No, but the whole thing of Romeo and Juliet is that it's not the best, but it's not as bad as everyone thinks. But you take a certain reading of it when you're a teenager, and it's a completely different reading of it as you get older, and you were like, oh, I totally misunderstand the whole play. So I kind of wanted to branch the two. Like, no, if you're a teenager, I want you to know exactly what the hell the consequences are of what's going on here. Yeah, that's all I'll say, because I don't want to say too much, because it is something I would like to make in some capacity one day.
It is a work in progress. Yeah,
it is a work in progress. However, the one that I did less work on, but I just had so much fun, was Titus Andronicus, but as a Western. Yes, dude. Oh man, it
seems prime for that. Yeah.
That play is just blood. Shakespeare threw like that manuscript down and it was soaked in blood. Oh, dude, like it was made to be a Western. So it was a little ahead of its time, I'll say that.
Just going back, bringing it back to Lost, like I am unsure how I would be different if I had been watching this like with you, as it was airing. I don't know. One, like there's enough of an age gap between you and I that even though a lot of our interests are aligned or a lot of them end up intersecting, there's also some things that, I'm a fan of and then you're not, and then vice versa. And I think Lost was just one of those things that I was just like, nah, yeah, I don't really care. I'm off, 2005. Yeah, I'm listening to The Black Parade by My Chemical Romance. And I'm just
I was just going to say that. Would you say differences between us? I'm like, I have not, and I probably will never enjoy My Chemical Romance.
You know what? And you're a lesser human being because of that.
And nothing against that, because like I actually dig Gerard Way and I dig their style. It's not music I listen to.
Right. Whereas me, high school, freshman year, just slowly, I wouldn't venture as far as to call myself like a goth kid or an emo kid, but I definitely I had the sensibilities.
You were a killjoy.
I was a killjoy. Exactly.
See, when I think of killjoys, I think of space bounty hunters.
Exactly. And I think of killjoy. I'm post-apocalyptic, road warrior. So there you go. Two sides of the same weird thing. Yeah. So I don't know. But now I'm just I all that to say is just I'm glad that we're here now.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we're here enjoying Lost together. I am having a freaking ball with this show. And even some of the things that I'm like, yeah, okay, like I might not be as much of a fan as this. And looking back on it being like this, I can 100% see why this killed in 2005.
Yeah.
And I, and specifically regarding like the flashback stuff, I could see why it killed, because this is technically this is the best sort of version of that, of doing that in a show. And I also just think now 2021, I can also see that I don't know that it always works.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, buckle the fuck up, because it's all downhill from now.
We got 5 more seasons of this, baby.
No, like I said, I love the show, and I think it gets really crazy. And I know a lot of people who don't like the show.
Oh yeah. I have friends who vehemently hate this show.
Well, I know a lot of people who don't like the show. They say it's downhill after season 1, and I think kind of like this finale maybe is like a little mini version of that, Part 1 was so good, and then parts 2 and 3 just get really crazy. Who knows? One thing I really like about Lost, each season is completely different. Each season, it is a different. This ain't a CW show,
Yeah.
Well, okay. I don't want to knock on CW, because I've actually been watching a couple CW shows recently, and I'm like, someone called it average. He's like, they're not bad, but they're average. I'm like, I'm actually having a lot of fun watching Walker right now, as cheesy it is as it is. So I don't want to put down the CW. And I also love the 100 for the most part. But this is a show that it's cinematic, man. It's so epic because each season is so different. It changed the stories changed. I think season 1 is, for the most part, it's kind of survival, because that's what most of this is around, even though there is little bits of different things scattered throughout. It's a survival show. Season 2, I think it gets more into mystery, and then each season changes, and then you start messing with different genres and different plot devices and all this stuff. So we'll see your thoughts as the show goes on and how the show changes each season. But also as an adult, I'm curious how, or if it even will affect you as a writer. Because I'll say this, I did watch Lost when it first aired. And after that, I started getting rid of main characters. Maybe I did have a lead, like I'd had like the Jack Shepherd, you know?
Sure.
But after that, and like that was like, Lost was the catalyst for me. After that, I could look at almost every single thing I have written that was fictional, and it's ensemble. And there's always usually some kind of dark mystery. You know, it's just like all the bad spin-offs at the time. Like, oh, there's going to be a dark twist that's going to keep people watching for the next X amount of years. There's always something to pull people in, you know?
Right.
That's the influence it's had on my, writing.
So. I am currently, my best friend and I are taking a, it's not necessarily a course, but we're going through a book called How to Write a Screenplay in 60 Days. And today's actually day 4. I have to do my assignment today. But just in these past 3 days, just looking at some of the assignments that they're doing, one of them was like, list some of your favorite movies and shows. The next one was, okay, like list more of them. Just at random, you know, like don't think about it too hard, just the ones that come to your mind instantly. And you're like, okay, yeah. So I wrote down a bunch. And then my assignment yesterday was to look at all the things that you wrote down and find all the things that they have in common and find all the aspects that you enjoy about them and see how many of them match up. And yeah, so a lot of the stuff I was looking at is like, oh yeah, it's ensemble. It's, like dynamic women, cast of misfits and weirdos. And usually one of the strongest things that I found in a lot of them was the fantastical versus the real. And in almost all of them, I was like, oh shit. Yeah. Like that's one of the things that I love, you know. I'm looking at like Gravity Falls. I'm looking at like The Expanse. I'm looking at Pan's Labyrinth. I'm like, yeah, all of these things are sort of like these fantastical elements are coming against and coming into and messing up this quote unquote real world for these people. And, you know, how does that affect them? How does that affect the world? You know, and Lost has all those things, and it's so weird to me that it took me this long to just actually get into it, because it fits my wheelhouse perfectly. You know, I love all the women in the show. I love that they're all written very differently. I love how just diverse in terms of like character, how diverse all these people are. You know, it's something that I think a lot of people maybe take for granted. And, you know, like, yeah, sure, fine, whatever. You're going to dump on Lost because it didn't answer all of your questions. Like, cool, that's great. But a lot of the things that I like about some things is I enjoy spending time with characters. So if I like something enough, I don't care how bad the thing is. I'm not a fan of the final season of Penny Dreadful. I love Penny Dreadful because I love its characters. So I'm going to keep rewatching it. Some of the Star Trek movies, they're not that great. You know, they're not up to snuff. But you know what I love? I love watching Kirk and Spock and Bones interact with each other. I love that. That's why people watch the original series. That's why people keep going back to the movies, because you get to see these people be friends in a different setting, you know, but you get to keep seeing these people. And that's one of the things that I really like about Lost, you know, despite whatever failings or misgivings it might have, or I might have because of it. I enjoy these people. I enjoy watching these people, and I enjoy these scenarios that they're put in. So
Yeah, and I think it also, if you look at Penny Dreadful, that's something that definitely that last season started. They tried, man, but it really ended up focusing more on the plot than the characters. They tried, man, because it was a really good season for some of those characters, but then it just like stopped at some point. You're like, wait, this is just all about plot. Like, I don't know. It was.
yeah. And I feel like it's kind of interesting because Penny Dreadful, I feel like the first season did it okay, but the second season did it like kind of perfectly, because it straddled the line between how plot heavy are we going to be versus how character heavy are we going to be.
And they really vibe together. The character story matched the plot that was going on.
And and it informed like, oh, this is the journey that this character is going on, you know. And it's like the best episodes of Penny Dreadful are the ones where it's Ava Green's past, you know, where we're going through her journey, you know, in her past before the show even starts. And those are the best episodes, even though not everybody's a part of it, but they're so character focused. And they're just mini, you know, I don't want to call them like bottle episodes, even though technically like one of them is, but it's so laser focused on what Penny Dreadful is all about. And it is about exploring these characters who maybe never had a voice in fiction, in literature, whatever. It's exploring their journey through, you know, this sort of gothic lens, you know, of terror. You know, it's just basically putting a face to something that we've always deemed as like horrifying or the monstrous, and it's putting a face on it. It's like it's not entirely that. It is you know, there's a mountain of realism in that. All that to say, that, you know, again, that's why I keep going back to Penny Dreadful, because it straddles that line and it does that sort of beautifully, you know. And I'll admit that, like, the third season, as out of hand as it might get, like, I also think that I enjoy it so much, you know, because that's also in my wheelhouse too. So
I know Ronald D. Moore, when he was wrapping up the very last episode of Battlestar Galactica, he said he couldn't figure it out. He could like, just the last episode wasn't working because they were trying to figure out like the battle, and they were going to have these two groups like fighting, because, you know, it was a military show, so it's lots of tactics, and they were going to have a meetup in the middle of the ship and all this stuff, and it just wasn't working. So he said he was taking a shower one night, and he just realized, he's like, I'm such an idiot. Like, it's about character. And the next day in the writer's room, he just erased everything they had, and he wrote it on the blackboard. It's all about character. It doesn't matter what kind of cool battle you're having if it's not tied to the character.
Yeah.
So back to Lost. We'll see. We'll see how they rate on that list. I think Lost, the high points of this season was character based, but I think also the low points, other than the Ethan storyline, the low points were as well. Like, so much of this show is character driven as of this first season. So we'll have to watch going forward, see what happens. But this episode's gone on long enough. So before we wrap this up, we got to do MVPs, man.
Oh man, like,
this is tough because I feel like it's going to be the same for last week.
As much as I want to give it to certain characters, I do feel like it's a little bit of a disservice because everybody's bringing their A game again.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, it's like, I mean, come on, like, how can I put up, you know, like, how can I put up like John Locke against like Emily DeRaven and Claire, like who's
Yeah.
like they're doing different things, but they're also bringing their A game, to the whole thing. So it's like, it's ensemble again.
Yeah, I agree. Giacchino, I loved his music still, but last episode really hit hard with the raft scene. This episode, like the music was good, but it didn't really stand out like last time. So Mike, you're not going to be my MVP this time. So I'm going to go for ensemble as well.
I will say that Giacchino does, he does do a lot of cool things, and it does feel a little bit more like dark mystery, dark adventurous, but yeah, I totally agree with you.
So next time we're not watching a new episode of Lost. We're going to be doing like our kind of post-mortem on the first season. We're just going to sit down, talk about it, discuss all our favorites, all our least favorites, yada, yada, what worked best, what didn't, which we've kind of talked a little bit about today and we've been bringing up throughout the season. So it might be a super short episode. It might be super long. I don't know. So next week, there won't be a new episode of Lost to watch, but we will be talking about season 1 in general. So as always, hit us up, like, subscribe, rate, comment, and share. Most importantly, share. Got any questions for us? Hit us up at #LostLegacies. And then you can find me on Instagram at Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch and on Twitter at _Matt Jimenez.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Reel, that's REEL, Texas Weirdo.
Cool. So, all right. Until next week,
Get lost.